Nathan Gilsdorf. Hello.
Hi.
Welcome back.
Thanks for having me back.
We love having you here. So, just to give you a brief introduction, he's a writer. His work has appeared in the New York Times, Boston Globe, USA Today, Newsday, The Washington Post, Wired, Salon, Psychology Today, among many other publications. I'd be standing here all day if we talked about all of them. So last time you were here, we talked a little bit about writing goals for 2018. A lot of people make New Year's resolutions to say they want to write more, to become better writers. So we're going to talk a little bit, and we also talked about your work with Grub Street.
Sure.
So today we're going to talk a little bit more about that, how people can really improve upon their writing, and we're going to dip into memoir writing, which you're teaching a class right now at Grub Street in Providence, which is so exciting that you've brought Grub Street to Providence. So talk to me a little bit about that. You've started this one class. Talk to me just what about it's like before we dip into to memoir writing and 2018. Talk to me just a little bit about what it's been like. You just kicked off a class at Grub Street. Talk to me a little bit about that, what it's been like, what the energy's like.
Good. Yeah. Well, it's been terrific. We've been sort of beating the bushes and pounding the pavement to get students in. We're teaching kind of in collaboration with a local high school called School One, which is over on the east side. And we're there on Monday nights. And the class I'm teaching, there are two other folks teaching from Grub Street as well. One is teaching short stories and fiction and novels. The other person's teaching screenwriting. And the class I'm teaching is in personal essay and memoir. It's designed for beginners. You know, you never know who's going to walk in the door. And we had our first class on Monday, and it looks like a great group so far. I really always get excited about that first night of class and sort of seeing what it is people want to accomplish. And, you know, for some people it's scary because they've never maybe taken themselves seriously as a writer, particularly with the kind of category of this class being memoir and personal essay. There's sometimes some very burning personal stories and, you know, things that folks want to explore in their writing. And, you know, so they have different levels of experience. But the course is designed to help folks reach their goals, take that baby step or that, you know, big step, whatever it is, in their career to make some of that writing happen. So,
which I think is so neat to be able to have something and to focus on it, because people might have an idea or thought but not really know how to develop it. So you're really helping them take that and to do it in a way which is good because you've had this experience. And you've really had experience in all levels. I mean, you've worked on poetry, you've written about food, you've written about grief, which we were just talking about. You've worked in many areas. So I think just being able to have that experience and showcase that and help people develop it is pretty neat. Okay, so let's talk about people's writing goals. And your thought process for chatting was staying true to your writing goals in 2018. What do you think people need to do to start setting writing goals in 2018 before they even stay true to them?
Sure, yeah, and this is obviously the time of year to be thinking about it because it's 2018 and folks want to start off on the right foot in the same way that you have goals for, you know, getting more exercise or eating better. And that's really the first lesson, is it is like anything else. You need to sort of be strategic about it and regimented and schedule it and make sure that you follow through on what you say you're going to do. Treat writing as seriously as you would an appointment with, you know, a girlfriend to go out for dinner, or with your therapist, or with your gym coach, or whatever that might be. So I think that's important. At the same time, don't set such a huge goal that you're going to fail. In other words, don't say, I'm going to write my novel in a month. I mean, that's just absurd.
Totally.
No one can do that. Just give yourself little goals, like 20 minutes, an hour a day, an hour a week, whatever it is that will make you feel like you're making progress and giving yourself encouragement. I think that's really one of the most, you know, it's one of my ideas for sort of what's the best way to kind of get this to be a habitual thing, and to kind of give yourself permission to, you know, writing is a process. You're not going to get it right the first time, and it takes time, it takes work, and just give yourself permission to just explore and to enjoy the process without getting so wound up about, oh, it's not perfect, you know, it doesn't come out perfectly, every sentence isn't perfectly crafted the way I envisioned it was going to be. You know, it's like anything, you're splashing paint onto the canvas, you can go back later and fix it, just start writing.
I think that's interesting. How do you balance, because you've written in many different sectors, did you ever have to write on deadline and then versus like writing? So how do you know, like, I can go back and fix this, but I really don't have time to go back and fix this?
I mean, that's hard. It's hard. I mean, there are sometimes deadlines, whether they're artificial ones or genuine ones. I do, you know, work as a freelance journalist, and sometimes there literally is an absolute time when you cannot revise it any further because it's going to go off the presses or whatever. But I feel like even for example, taking a creative writing class can provide some structure for deadlines, which is motivation. If nothing else, it's your turn to share your work. You better come to class with something. It's never too late to go back and change it. Just get it as best as you can for that deadline you've given yourself. And, that might be draft 17, and then you can always go back and keep working on it with draft 18, draft 19. Obviously, when your piece, like when I wrote my book, Fantasy Freaks and Gaming Geeks, even after it was in final galleys at the presses, the book came off the presses. I was reading it for the first time. I was like, oh, I wish I had more time. I could have, you can never really get rid of that voice in your head that says, I wish I had more time. It could have been even better. That's just, you live with that voice, I think, as a writer.
Yeah. Plus, if you continuously live with that voice, then you'll actually never do it. So get over it, maybe.
Exactly. Those voices are really important to acknowledge and to dismiss. Sort of the, what I have to say isn't valuable. Who am I to, I'm going to be whining and complaining about my miserable life. If you're writing a memoir, these are common voices that are sort of designed to make us feel humble and make us feel like we're not puffing ourselves up and being, sort of full of ourselves. And those are, I think, healthy voices to have. But that doesn't mean that you don't have the right or the kind of, obligation in some cases to tell your story or to feel like, I have something to contribute to the larger conversation about what it's like to be a human being.
So interesting. Okay. You said something else when you are staying true to your writing goals is how do we deal with procrastinating and then continue to maintain that goal setting?
Yeah, that's a huge problem for me. I'm an expert procrastinator and I also get distracted and
I'm an expert distracted.
Yeah, and it's hard, right? We live in this world where we ostensibly are doing hard work, yet we are maybe just sitting in front of our computers or looking at our devices, and it seems as if we are seriously focusing on our work, but in fact there's a million ways to not get that work done and to be distracted, whether it's by what's going on in your family, in your house, or your personal life, or literally the screens in front of your eyes. And so it's really important to think about discrete, 20-minute blocks of time, organizing some kind of scenario where you only write when you go to this one cafe, or talking to your spouse or your partner and saying, hey, Tuesday night is my writing group night. I'm going to go to this restaurant with my friends and we're going to talk about our writing. Can you help me to stay on target? Can you help me to, not being a nag, but like help support me like everything else? It's like going to the gym. You need someone to say, okay, I've got the child care coverage, taken care of, you go off and do this thing for you. And these kinds of supporting, tricks or whatever, or, support mechanisms in your life can be really, really important. And that also, I think part of that is also being part of a larger community of just other than yourself. Being a writing is lonely, you're by yourself, it's primarily a solitary pursuit. But it doesn't mean that even though the writing itself mostly has to be done by yourself, that you can't seek support of other writers, go to literary events, take a class like at Grub Street or somewhere else, go to your local bookstore, lectures by folks coming to some of the wonderful institutions we have here in Providence, at Brown or RISD or PC or wherever it is. Be part of that larger community so you don't feel like you're just alone in your attic garret, with your gloves with the fingers cut off, burning your furniture, to stay warm in the middle of winter. I mean, it doesn't have to be this kind of suffering, a lonely, tortured artist kind of, myth.
You don't have to put yourself through that.
You don't. You don't have to cut your ear off. You don't have to, be mentally ill. Like, it's totally fine to be normal and be a writer. That's cool.
There's other ways to go about it.
Yeah.
I think that's so neat, though, to be able to, it's valuable too. We talked about being organized. We talked about self-care, and now we're talking about writing. So being able to be organized through setting those goals and treating yourself to this. If it's something that you want to do, if it's something that you want to be important to you, and it's something that you want to work on, then hold yourself accountable and make time for yourself and treat yourself to this. If it's something that you want to do, allow yourself to do it. I think that's really important.
And give yourself a little carrot at the end of that stick. So maybe as much as you love writing, and once you're writing, you love it, it's sort of hard to get your butt in the chair. So you say to yourself, I'm going to have that bowl of ice cream after I do my 20 minutes. I'm going to watch, Game of Thrones episode, whatever, after I finish this thing. So that there's something that you're looking forward to. In my experience, I dread the sitting down and actually writing. That's the hardest part. Once I'm writing and I'm not distracted, I'm having a great time and I lose myself in it. I get into that flow state where it's fun. It might be frustrating, but I'm exploring, and that's a fun, creative space for me to be in. it's just it's a big blank page. What do I do?
Yeah,
scary, seemingly scary, not really scary.
And it depends too. Just getting those thoughts organized can also be difficult for people. But that's why you explore these events. You go to classes. You be part of a community to figure out where you want to take those thoughts and how to get direction and how to get better. And it does get better.
Yeah, and how to and be inspired by other writers. I mean, of course, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. If I want to write an essay or a memoir or a novel, I don't have to invent this entire new thing that's never been done before. There are other writers out there that have done it before you. It seems as if there might have been other people who've done it before us, and you can be inspired by that. And it's craft. It's like building a birdhouse or a chair. There are elements that I can teach you that creative writing teachers can teach you about how to write a scene and how to develop your character and how to explore time and description and all this stuff. It sort of seems obvious, but it's like if you were to learn how to do another skill like play the violin or ride a bicycle, there's things you need to know. If the bicycle breaks down, how to fix it, how to stay balanced, all these things. These are things that we can teach in the classroom. I've discovered in my 20 plus years as a creative writing teacher that even if you don't have a lot of experience writing, you can learn a lot quickly. And it doesn't take much for people to go, oh, that's what that is. I can do that.
That actually makes me curious because you've worked in writing in so many different genres. I mean, poetry, you've worked describing food, you proclaim a kind of you write about the geek world.
Yep.
Do those skills transfer no matter what? Because you do teach creative writing and being able to describe scenes, to be able to do your writing skills, does it transfer no matter what throughout all these different genres?
I think so. I mean, I started out writing. Initially I started writing out in college, very bad short stories and poems, and then I became a poet or tried to become a poet. And all the training I had early on, for example, in poetry, where there's a lot of attention to the sound of language, to really choosing the right word, being conscious of that. As a journalist, which I spent most of the last 15 or so years doing, thinking about being concise, because in journalism you don't have a lot of space on the page typically. So
but
that
the
comes
right word also matters too.
In the right word, just having some attention to that. Or my skill as a novel writer comes into play when I'm writing memoir. People sort of forget that the way you write a memoir is not unlike the way you write a novel. There's dialogue and there's character, there's description. We talk about the different kinds of ways you can make, honestly, a scene or a moment come alive, and all the stuff that you read that's in your favorite thriller or your favorite mystery novel, that stuff can be in your memoir. And it can be just as gripping as those books are. And so these skills are transferable from all these different genres.
I think that's fascinating and good to know. Okay, so before we let you go, we still have a few minutes. Let's talk a little bit. So you're working on this memoir course.
Yep.
And if people are interested, it's already started, and I believe you're full, right, for this?
We are, yeah, but we have more coming up. So
there's more coming up, including an op-ed course, which is online, which I think is super cool.
Which starts on Tuesday. This doesn't require that you live in Boston or Providence or anywhere. You can be anywhere on the planet and takes this class. So this is a 6-week class that starts on Tuesday.
Super cool.
Called 6 Weeks, 6 Op-Eds, and every week you write an op-ed and you work with with your colleagues in the classroom to help give each other feedback and support. And so that's happening. There's this 6-week class right now at School One that's sort of a beginner memoir, personal essay class. There'll be a second one coming up at the beginning of April, which will be sort of the companion to that, but you don't have to have taken the first one to be in the second one. It's sort of more an intermediate class. For the moment, that's what I'm doing in Providence anyway, for our Providence listeners or viewers. That's on Monday nights. But the online one is great. Of course, there's other courses at Grub Street in Boston, and the organization where we are teaching these classes, School One, has a couple other local organizations that they work with, including Frequency Writers and Goat Hill Writers, that also use their space. I forget which night of the week it is. I think it might be Thursdays. To teach classes. So there's lots going on here in Providence if you want to take a creative writing class, not just with me.
I think I think it's so neat that we just have this. I think it seems like a pretty solid writing community. Just the arts community here is inspiring to me. So let's talk a little bit about what, if people aren't able to join this class, the next one starts in April, but what's some advice you have for people who want to start writing that memoir? I mean, people might be like, oh, my life has been amazing, or I don't know, whatever they think, okay, this is what I want to do, this is how I want to start. What are some ways that people can start before they put either that pen on paper or they sit down with their keyboard?
Yeah, well, the example you gave is great, because I get a lot of people who say this. People have told me that I have this amazing life, and I might say to you, Molly, I've had a horrible childhood. It's terrible. Isn't it awful? And, you're not crying.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, you're sorry, sort of in a very vague, like, nice person way.
Okay.
But for me, really, to make you feel like you understand what it was like for me to have a miserable childhood, if that was indeed my story, I need to make you feel that. So what I suggest my students do in these beginning classes in particular is think of the key moments in your life that were transformative, where things changed, where there was something at risk or something was really going on in your life that was amazing. But bring us into that moment, okay? So in the story of my life, let's say I'm going to write about my mother's traumatic brain injury, which is an unfortunate event that happened to her. And instead of just saying, yeah, my mom had this awful medical event and it was really traumatic for my family, I'm going to instead bring you into the moment when I went in to see her in the ICU for the first time when I was 12 years old. And I'm going to walk you through the hallway at Mass General Hospital in 1978. And I'm going to talk about what the hallway smells like. And I'm talking about what it's like to go through that door into the room and the doctors and see my mother laying there. And I'm going to try to bring you into the world of my head. Try to recapture that pain or that emotion that I was feeling, the voice in my head or the thoughts and feelings. So you focus on these discrete little moments and you try to bring the reader's attention through writing, direct their attention in the same way that a director of a film will decide this is a long shot of the city of Providence and now here is a close-up of Molly. And we're going to vacillate between these two extremes to help show, guide the reader through your story. You can't tell them everything about your life. It's not possible. I was born, in 1966. I'm still alive in 2018. You can't talk about every single day of your life. You got to pick some key moments. And that's the number one thing I would recommend. And we do that in our classes. We talk about how do you do that. Let's really break this down as a piece of craft and try to make people understand how it is you can do it. And you can do it. You can have these amazing emotional effects on your readers if you take the time and the care to really bring us in it, bring us there.
Have you heard people's stories where you're like, yes, I would read that?
Absolutely.
That would be a bestseller.
Absolutely. Every student that I've had has amazing stories, even stories that feel like on the surface they're not, I didn't like go in the Peace Corps or, discover, the cure for cancer. It's sort of an ordinary life, but everyone has lived. Everyone's experienced heartbreak, everyone experienced loss, everyone has experienced these things. And I have students, regularly beginners, who just the light bulb goes off in them at some point during the class. They find a new way to talk about something, and people in the class it's not therapy, but people are crying, people are moved. They are, whatever it was for that person to go through their experience and to live as a human being gets communicated to the rest of us in some way. And that's all we really ask for, is to have that, that emotional communication happening.
It's pretty neat to be able to have that experience and to be able to help people get started on whatever journey they're taking, whether they're doing it for themselves, whether they're going to take their writing off in some direction, or whether that's really it.
Yeah.
Whether it's just going to be a 6-week course because they wanted to challenge themselves in a new way. That has to feel pretty good to be able to help someone get started on whatever journey they're taking.
Yeah, and I see it. I'm just there as the facilitator, and I create the structure. They do all the hard work.
That's pretty neat.
And that part is, very gratifying that I can be part of that, honestly, that it's something that, I can facilitate and just step back and watch it happen.
That's pretty neat.
Yeah.
All right, we're going to wrap up here on Golocal Live. Kate Nagel takes over in just a minute. Ethan, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me back.
Of course. Hope you'll come back once again.
Sure.
We are going to wrap up here. If you want more information on Grub Street, on the writing courses, or more on Ethan, we'll put links on our website, golocalprof.com. Thanks so much for joining me. We have a fun show tomorrow you do not want to miss. We're talking about a lot of fun things like the Super Bowl and the Puppy Bowl. Yeah, you don't want to miss it. Thanks so much for joining me. Kate Nagel kicks off here in just a moment.